Welcome, friends. We're here in New York City, and we'd like to share with you some stories that we've encountered here in New York City. And we'd like to share some thoughts that we've had in regarding to sharing with our Jehovah's Witness friends. You may have friends or family, people that you know that are within this faith, and we're praying and hoping that God will give us an understanding in reaching these people for the kingdom. As we approached a group of Jehovah's Witnesses today, we came across a table of about 3-4 people, and I had asked the ladies there at the table if they understood this prophecy that they find within their book, which is called the 2520 prophecy. As you notice here within the early Millerite history in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the 2520 here in the upper left-hand corner is a prophecy that the Millerites taught about when Jesus would move from the most holy to the most holy place, the encountering of the church, of when it would begin, and also of the gathering time. As we look at this chart, we see here that our friends, the Jehovah's Witnesses, are using the same prophecy of the 2520. We use it to promote the year 1844 and the dates encountering with what we understand about Jesus in the most holy place, but they use it from the dates of 1914. So when we visit with these ladies here today, we asked them if they understood the 2520 prophecy, and they had said that they had never heard of it. So we approach their booth, we inquire, we ask questions. We don't go off the bat talking to them like we know everything or are teaching, but we go in with an inquisitive mindset, asking questions, getting them to think, and to share the doctrine that they say that is so foundational to them. But I'll let Jason share a little bit here as we encounter today and some of his thoughts with you.
What I was noticing, Brother Hovey, when you were talking with the two ladies and the gentleman that walked up, the Jehovah's Witness, that you hit them with a lot of questions in regards to their 2520 prophecy. And as Brother Hovey explained to you what that is, they indicated they didn't have a clue until you mentioned 1914.
Correct.
And Brother Hovey asked them that if this was an important date and if this date could be moved or not, and is it salvational, and what did they say?
Well, from their understanding, it wasn't salvational at first because they couldn't teach it. But when we had mentioned the year 1914, all of a sudden it became a very prominent date for them as a church. And the one lady had mentioned, yes, I know this prophecy, but it would take me a day and a half to freshen up on my understanding to share it with you. And the bottom line is, my Seventh-day Adventist friends, is every Jehovah's Witness that I've encountered here in New York City, that I've asked the question, can they share the 2520 prophecy with me? Not one of them have been able to share it from off the cuff or have even acknowledged it.
That is correct. And as he was talking to these two ladies, as I mentioned earlier, a gentleman came in and began discussing the prophetic side of understanding that the Jehovah's Witnesses have on the 2520 a little bit, and also on the date of 1914. And to our surprise, he was pretty educated, wasn't he, Brother Hovey?
Very educated man. This man, he understood the prophecies of the Dark Ages. He mentioned the timing that when paganism and Catholicism united. He talked about the issue of the Trinity. He talked about the issue of Christmas, Easter, other holidays that most Christians keep. And when we visit with the man, we shared that we did not believe in the Trinity. We had shared many things, and the guy had asked us, if you don't believe in these things, he says, why aren't you a Jehovah's Witness? And I had shared one thing with him. He says, why won't you become a Jehovah's Witness? And I had shared that one of the concerns that I had from my understanding of the Jehovah's Witnesses was that they get a second chance from this life after. As a people, they teach that they as Jehovah's Witnesses will be given another chance of salvation after this lifetime. And I had shared that to my understanding from the Bible, that this is our chance, now is the day of our salvation and the time to make an appeal, or when God's making an appeal to us to make the decision.
Yes, he implied that after, I believe it was the millennium, the earthly millennium of 1,000 years, that after that we get a second chance to redeem ourselves and that we're not sealed yet, which really goes against what we teach as Adventists. But what was very interesting about this gentleman was the knowledge that he had of the Dark Ages and of Constantine.
Yes.
And how that Constantine took Christianity and mixed it with paganism. So he had a clear understanding, like the Adventists do, that the Catholic Church and Constantine were really responsible for the paganism and the Christianity to mix together, which was interesting. He went ahead and mentioned that part of it, as you said, was the Trinity, the judgment, but he never mentioned Sabbath. He never mentioned Sabbath one time as being a part of it, and as we know in 321 AD what Constantine did.
Yes. One of the other interesting things that he had mentioned when we're going back and forth and sharing, I just want you to remember, our Seventh-day Adventist friends, that you can't go in with the mindset that you're going to teach and you're going to straighten out a Jehovah's Witness on the spot. They're very reluctant people. They believe they have the truth. They're firm in what they believe. And you have to try to challenge them in their understanding from the Bible. But one of the things that was very interesting, as I approached the Jehovah's Witnesses, as we approached them here in New York City and other places, we find that the Jehovah's Witnesses, when they find out the understanding that we do have, they want to know, who are we studying with? And this is one thing you may disagree with me on as a people, but I do not tell the Jehovah's Witnesses that I'm a Seventh-day Adventist right away. And let me explain why before you get crazy with what I'm saying. The reason why I don't say that I'm a Seventh-day Adventist right away and give them that understanding, because once they find out that we're Seventh-day Adventists, they stop the conversation right then and there. And my hope and my interest is to share with them, to get them thinking, and they're starting to realize here in New York City that there's a group of people that have more understanding of them in the Bible, and they're very inquiring and inquisitive as to finding out who this group is. So remember one thing, that as we look at the life of Christ and his disciples, they did not share everything at once as to what they understood. And I'm not saying we can't say we're Seventh-day Adventists at some time in the future. I'm just holding off on this. I'm sharing other perspectives that we share in Bible truth in common, to get them to think that there's people outside of them that do have understanding, and to challenge them.
Yes, and one thing to remember, we never argue with them. It's better to ask questions, to try to make them understand what they know about their own faith.
Yes.
And that's the best policy we have found, is to ask the questions, be direct, and to only speak truth and let them do most of the talking.
Some of the other aspects that we talk about with the Jehovah's Witnesses, some of the things we have in common that I share with Jehovah's Witnesses, I share one that I don't say we're Seventh-day Adventists, but I say as a people, we believe in the one true God. And we mention God and Jehovah back and forth in our talk, so it helps them to feel a little more comfortable when we mention the name Jehovah. And I do not believe it's salvational that you have to say Jehovah. We don't believe that you have to say the sacred name, so to speak, for salvation. But the issue of the understanding of who Jehovah is, and the understanding that there is a difference between God and Jesus. The Son does inherit the Father's name. And the major issue is the understanding that there is a difference between them. And also, when sharing with the Jehovah's Witnesses, we talk about the first commandment. Obviously, within the first commandment, you're getting straight to the issue of the Trinity. I thank them as a people that they have the right understanding that the Trinity is false. And I also thank them that when you go to their temples or their places of worship, they have no idols in their churches. Their walls are plain. They have nothing for pictures of Jesus or other relics or statues or people of Christendom. And this is something that they do understand as a people. So the gentleman we had today, as I went down the road of mentioning the first commandment, the second commandment, and I had asked them, are they salvational issues? Is the understanding of one God salvational?
That was a very interesting question that you asked him. He didn't really want to answer it at first. At first he said it wasn't salvational. And as we began to talk with him further about it and to try to get him to understand that the first commandment in regards to the Trinity was a salvational issue, he tried to sidestep the whole situation and said, well, it's really not salvational, that it is sovereignty of religion, I think is the way he put it.
Sovereignty of God.
The sovereignty of God. Thank you, Brother Hovey. And from then on, nothing was salvational as much as it was a sovereignty of God. And Jason asked for clarification on that, but he really didn't get any.
No, I didn't get any clarification. We tried different routes to get him to think of truth as a people. And I had asked the man, what is sin? And he never did give me a definition. Now, to many, we know that the Bible says that sin is the transgression of the law of God. And it seemed to me that as this man spoke, he never wanted to address the issue of sin. And he had also shared that as we looked around the world, even the people that were following us through the subway stations there, that these were good people. The objective that I could see, the main position that this man was taking, was that I had to become a Jehovah's Witness. That was my salvation, and really there was nothing else pertaining as long as I acknowledged the organized body of Jehovah's Witnesses, accepted that, came into the body of faith, didn't keep my eyes upon people. As we know, we're not to be looking to man and what's happening within the organized body. And he addressed it mainly from that standpoint. He was a very intellectual man. He had understanding of great historical things, but as a person to come straight forward with what needed to be done within our lives in addressing sin and the issue of salvation, he did not have the understanding.
No, and back to that topic of wanting to address sin and what sin is, he actually brought up Noah and the flood, if you remember correctly. And basically, as Adventists, we teach this as a shut door scene because God closed the door, and as in 1844, it was a shut door experience. And he implied that even though the 8 that went in the ark were definitely saved, that the ones on the outside just weren't prepared yet and hadn't had enough time to accept the gospel, so they would get a second chance, and we can't say that they're lost now.
Yes. The bottom line is our Jehovah's friends are preaching a secondary probation, and it takes away the urgency. When you look at the issue of the first angel's message, fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment has come, it's putting humanity in a position that the judgment is set, and at some point it's moving from the dead to the living, and then we don't get a second chance. This is our time. And so when we think of our Jehovah's Witness friends, there's many things that they do have more understanding than your basic Christian beliefs of believers of Christians. But there's so many other things that they're faltering on. And we want to share these with you and more in the future here. But we want to encourage you that we believe that God is reaching out to these, that the third angels, the first, second, and third angels' message needs to go to these people, and that we as Seventh-day Adventists, we've failed through the years. As I encounter most Seventh-day Adventists, they bring up the issue of the Sabbath right away with the Jehovah's Witnesses and leave them in their tracks and left with no more conversation. And even this man here discussed, he said the Pope is coming right here to speak to the United Nations and the United States, or specifically New York City here in America. And this man was once a Roman Catholic Christian. He's become a Jehovah's Witness. He understood a little bit of Revelation 17, some of the other prophecies. And when you really think about the Jehovah's Witnesses, they really have no complete understanding of the book of Revelation or Daniel. They take aspects of it, but yet they truly don't have the understanding that God has given William Miller, which moved on to become the Seventh-day Adventists in the Church of the Day. They don't have that. And I just want to mention here again, folks, that we could share this chart with our Jehovah's Witness friends. If you could lift that up, Jace. This chart here I've shared with other Jehovah's Witness people, and I have had them with interested where they've taken this chart from our hands. They've been interested, they've wanted to see more, and you have to approach them in a manner that is, hey, have you ever seen this? And the gentleman that we approached today, he had said they had never seen it. I showed him the 2520, he says, oh yeah, that's the chart we have. He acknowledged it was his chart, but he's never looked at it, and then when he looks more firmly at it, he realizes he doesn't have the same understanding on that chart as that we do. And then we went into the understanding of what, Jason, about that chart?
Is that when we touched, what was that we touched on?
Well, we talked about the issue of the 2520 and how that the Jehovah's Witnesses have changed their dates from the 1914.
Yeah, sorry, Brother Hovey, about that. Yes, we were talking about the dates shifting forward in their timeline, and he said that Christianity and religion was progressive. And as Adventists, we don't teach futurism or moving dates, because every date that's given on the timeline, whether it be the 2300 days, the 2520 of the Northern Kingdom of Israel, and the 1290, 1260, is set in stone completely. And we can't go backwards. Those dates are set. And Ellen White says that after 1844, that prophetically in time, nothing else, there's no more of it. All we're waiting for is the second coming of Christ. And Brother Hovey was asking me, if you shift those dates forward and do it progressively, where are we at in time?
Yes.
Because we don't know where we're at now.
Another question I asked the gentlemen and the ladies at the table was if they understood the issue of Islam and why they're killing Christians, and they said no. And I'd mentioned to them that the issue why Muslims of today and Muslims back of past history, the Arab and Saracens, the reasons why that they were going after Roman Catholic Christians and Christians of the persuasion of their faith was the reason that, number one, they believed in the issue of the Trinity. Number one reason. Muslims do not believe in the Trinity. They know it's false. And the other reason was that when you look at Catholicism and other churches of the Eastern Orthodox faith, they bow to idols and statues. So we shared with them on the chart there, the 1843 chart, that when the Roman Catholic Church and its persuasion was killing true Christianity of the day, that God raised up Islam to actually punish those that were that were believing in the Trinity, worshiping false gods, and so forth. And the gentleman had never heard of that. Do you have anything to say on that?
Yes, but what was interesting as Brother Hovey was explaining about the Muslim people protecting the Christians during that time period, he had never heard of that before, but he did say that he'd like to take a look at it and he'd go home and try to study it and see if that was truth.
Yeah, the one thing that I've found, my friends, is that sharing the issue of Islam and its use in punishing apostate Protestantism or Catholicism and what we're moving into apostate Protestantism, that it intrigues the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's something they've never thought of. I have shared with them many times that within their churches, within the witness organization, they have no idols. They don't believe in the Trinity. I commend them on that. And then later on, we bring in the issue of the Sabbath. We try to lock them in that the law of God is very important, that it's salvational, that we'll be judged according to the works that we've done in the body. And as you and I both know, that we can't keep the law of God of ourselves, but as we rely upon the merits and the power of Jesus Christ to work within us, that He can change us and that we can keep the commandments of God, that it is the great issue of time. And when you look at the issue of the Sabbath, this is something that humanity's forgotten, and it's something that we need to bring to our Jehovah's Witness friends. But I ask of you, our friends, to consider to share it in a manner in which they have never heard of before. Think of yourselves of a way to share with them indirectly, gain their confidence as a people, let them know that you are a Bible-believing person, that you do believe in truth. They believe in the state of the dead as we do. They believe in the non-Trinitarian doctrine like the Seventh Adventist forefathers, the pioneers, Ellen White herself of the early movement. They do believe that Jesus was created, But when you do look at the Jehovah's Witnesses, they do focus on the life of Christ and his submission to the Father. And this is something that Christianity in general has forgotten. And I'll leave our last and closing remarks to you, Jace.
Yes, as Brother Hobie was saying, it's very important to understand the things that we have in common with the Jehovah's Witness, and prophecy is definitely one of them. Even though it may not be completely the same, it's very close. They do believe in the one true God. We have that in common with them also. And we need to keep them in our prayers.
This is something that humanity's forgotten, and it's something that we need to bring to our Jehovah's Witness friends. But I ask of you, our friends, to consider to share it in a manner in which they have never heard of before. Think of yourselves of a way to share with them indirectly, gain their confidence as a people, let them know that you are a Bible-believing person, that you do believe in truth, they believe in the state of the dead as we do. They believe in the non-Trinitarian doctrine like the Seventh-day Adventist forefathers, the pioneers, Ellen White herself of the early movement. They do believe that Jesus was created. But when you do look at the Jehovah's Witnesses, they do focus on the life of Christ and his submission to the Father. And this is something that Christianity in general has forgotten. And I'll leave our last and closing remarks to you, Jace.
Yes, as Brother Hobie was saying, it's very important to understand the things that we have in common with the Jehovah's Witness, and prophecy is definitely one of them. Even though it may not be completely the same, it's very close. They do believe in the one true God. We have that in common with them also. And we need to keep them in our prayers. They're our brothers and sisters. We need to realize that we ourselves need to be very skilled in our understanding of the prophetic.
This is something that humanity's forgotten, and it's something that we need to bring to our Jehovah's Witness friends. But I ask of you, our friends, to consider to share it in a manner in which they have never heard of before. Think of yourselves of a way to share with them indirectly, gain their confidence as a people, let them know that you are a Bible-believing person, that you do believe in truth, they believe in the state of the dead as we do. They believe in the non-Trinitarian doctrine like the Seventh-day Adventist forefathers, the pioneers, Ellen White herself of the early movement. They do believe that Jesus was created. But when you do look at the Jehovah's Witnesses, they do focus on the life of Christ and his submission to the Father. And this is something that Christianity in general has forgotten. And I'll leave our last and closing remarks to you, Jace.
Yes, as Brother Hobie was saying, it's very important to understand the things that we have in common with the Jehovah's Witness, and prophecy is definitely one of them. Even though it may not be completely the same, it's very close. They do believe in the one true God. We have that in common with them also. And we need to keep them in our prayers. They're our brothers and sisters. We need to realize that we ourselves need to be very skilled in our understanding of the prophetic.
This is something that humanity's forgotten, and it's something that we need to bring to our Jehovah's Witness friends. But I ask of you, our friends, to consider to share it in a manner in which they have never heard of before. Think of yourselves of a way to share with them indirectly, gain their confidence as a people, let them know that you are a Bible-believing person, that you do believe in truth, they believe in the state of the dead as we do. They believe in the non-Trinitarian doctrine like the Seventh-day Adventist forefathers, the pioneers, Ellen White herself of the early movement. They do believe that Jesus was created. But when you do look at the Jehovah's Witnesses, they do focus on the life of Christ and his submission to the Father. And this is something that Christianity in general has forgotten. And I'll leave our last and closing remarks to you, Jace.
Yes, as Brother Hobie was saying, it's very important to understand the things that we have in common with the Jehovah's Witness, and prophecy is definitely one of them. Even though it may not be completely the same, it's very close. They do believe in the one true God. We have that in common with them also. And we need to keep them in our prayers. They're our brothers and sisters. We need to realize that we ourselves need to be very skilled in our understanding of the prophetic.
This is something that humanity's forgotten, and it's something that we need to bring to our Jehovah's Witness friends. But I ask of you, our friends, to consider to share it in a manner in which they have never heard of before. Think of yourselves of a way to share with them indirectly, gain their confidence as a people, let them know that you are a Bible-believing person, that you do believe in truth, they believe in the state of the dead as we do. They believe in the non-Trinitarian doctrine like the Seventh Day Adventist forefathers, the pioneers, Ellen White herself of the early movement. They do believe that Jesus was created. But when you do look at the Jehovah's Witnesses, they do focus on the life of Christ and His submission to the Father. And this is something that Christianity in general has forgotten. And I'll leave our last and closing remarks to you, Jace.
Yes, as Brother Hobie was saying, it's very important to understand the things that we have in common with the Jehovah's Witness, and prophecy is definitely one of them. Even though it may not be completely the same, it's very close. They do believe in the one true God. We have that in common with them also. And we need to keep them in our prayers. They're our brothers and sisters. We need to realize that we ourselves need to be very skilled in our understanding of the prophetic